Here, Coy, come here. Now where in thunder is that doggone dog? The brow of Birdeye Collins was channeled with an angry scowl as he stood on the narrow front porch of his log house and called long, loud, and vainly to his bear-hound pup. More'n likely that pup will roust a polecat up in that mountain, and he won't be able to track a slab of beefsteak drug over the ground with a string. This is a terrible way to start preparing for the big hunt tomorrow morning, having your young dog all skunked up in Big Smoky the night before. Birdeye yelled out with his booming voice. Here, Coy! Here, Coy! Come here, boy! Before long, his shouts were answered with a deep bang of a hound far up the mountainside. Some seconds passed, and the long howl was repeated. In a few moments, the mountaineer's quick ear caught the rustle of padded paws in the thick growth above the cabin, and the truant canine, the rangy, powerful creature, black as midnight, came trotting complacently home. Dad burn your black-eyed Coy, where you been? The gruff voice of the master scolded. Ain't you ashamed of running off that way? I'm fixing to take you on a sure enough hunt in the morning. But Coy somehow sensed that it was all good-natured gruffness, and the big hand that patted the slim, sensitive head of the giant pup and fondled his silky ears was as gentle as a girl's. It was barely 2 hours past midnight when Birdeye Collins rose and pushed open the wooden shutter that had done its poor best to keep out the frosty night air. He cast his eye up the steep, wooded slope of the mountain, and he scanned the narrow field of the sky above. What he saw seemed to please him. Well, it fared up like I was hoping, he mumbled half aloud, and, closing the shutter, he lit the lamp and he stirred the coals in the fireplace, and before long, the fragrance of sizzling bacon filled the house. A sharp holler in the distance roused the pup Coy and 2 other hounds that were sleeping underneath the porch. Birdeye went out to silence the dogs and welcome Jeter Clegg, the first of the hunting party to arrive. Soon, the other mountaineers began to appear. Daly Walker and his graybeard sire, and old Nelsie Walker, veteran of 100 bear hunts, and finally, Tom Humphreys and Bud Cagle. There were a half-score of dogs, ranging from the pedigree hunters to Daly Walker's shag, reported to be about half hound and the balance of just dog. All the dogs were yapping and tugging at their collars and raring to go. Birdeye Collins' Coy was easily to be picked as a favorite, even after making due allowance for every mountaineer's unshaken assurance that his own dog was the absolute best hunter in the animal kingdom. Coy, though he was hardly more than half grown, was already locally famous. Was he not the grandson of Old Blue Nose, renowned in the annals of the Smokies for having brought to bay the great 3-toed bear that had terrorized the barnyards of the Sugar Lands for a dozen years? Old-timers like Nelsie Walker, who remembered the famous Blue Nose, were fond of pointing out the traits that old Coy resembled his grandpa. He favors that old dog a heap, said old man Nelsie, who was never tired of repeating. Same shaped head, same easy lope-like on the tail, and the same look out of his eye. Lordy, Birdeye, if he's got the same fighting stuff in him, you'll have you the master bear dog in the Smokies. Well, he better have his fighting stuff in him today, Birdeye returned savagely. I dreamt me a dream last night that we ran up on old Lucky, that big bear that killed them 5 dogs last winter. A feller told me the other day that old varmint has been hiding out in a lum cave, and that's where we're heading for this morning. And if Coy won't fight, I hope old Lucky will clean every bit of his meat off his bones. Now, boys, Jeter Clegg sang out ironically, we can all see that Birdeye's just pretending that he's a-wishing for Coy to get all tore up. Why, he thinks more of that black pup than he does of his young'uns, old Nelsie replied. Heck, why wouldn't he be? That dog's a thoroughbred. Through the frosty woods rang out the crisp laughter of the huntsmen as they bustled through their preparations for the start. Birdeye Collins was the first to sling across his shoulders his sack of corn dodger, streaked Midland, and home-ground coffee, rolled up in an old blanket tied at the ends with leather thongs. As he tightened his hunting belt and he picked up his heavy rifle, he good-naturedly replied to the banter of his mates. All right, Uncle Nelsie, you drugged me pretty good that time, didn't you? I'll admit that I think right smart of that there dog. But if he's got any yeller in him today, and he won't tussle with old Lucky today, I hope he'll get himself plumb tore up. It still lacked an hour till sunup when Birdeye swung into position at the head of the column of the 6 men and 10 dogs. Then they set out to the wildest, remotest, and roughest wilderness in eastern America, known only to the few men that have traversed it as Huggins Hell. Frost crystals hung from every twig and leaf of the trees. Though clad in cotton overalls with low, coarse shoes, the men didn't have any socks on their feet. But the burly men didn't pay no mind to the December cold. With long, swinging strides over jagged ridges and down through the dense, dark ravines, they pushed on tirelessly. The dogs, leashed in pairs, tugged at their chains, but they resisted the urge to sniff even the freshest trails of possum, raccoon, or fox, which could have easily doomed the hunt. When the sun finally lifted its beaming face out of North Carolina and winked down through the Newfound Gap into sleeping Tennessee, Birdeye's party had covered the 7 crooked miles up through the sugarlands and was trending its way through the deep recesses of the virgin spruce trees that line Bullhead Mountain. An hour later, they stopped for a brief blow at Bracken's cabin, where a little-used trail branched off to the left, off of the old road to Loot Gap, and followed the meanderings of Alum Cave Creek to the very jaws of Huggins Hell. Here, Birdeye outlined the plan of the campaign. Nelsie Walker, whose 70 years had somewhat slowed his feet, but hadn't unsteadied his aim, was given the honor of the first stand. "Uncle Nelsie," Birdeye directed, "you light out through the brush and top out yonder, on this here big ridge to the right. You know where the main bear trail crosses out toward Mingus. You find you a good stand right close to the trail. Daly and them other boys are going to cruise around under the chimney tops. They ought to raise a good bear in them briar patches, and he'll head right up past your stand." Nelsie started at once. He needed no trail. He could trust his sense of direction, even in the roughest sections of the great mountain range. In another hour, he would reach the top of the cross ridge and pick his point of vantage near a well-marked bear trail. Jeter Clegg was given the second stand a half a mile or so to the east, on a ridge that led in the direction of the Newfound Gap, known to be another runway of the bears. "Tom, you take them dogs of yourn and scout up this branch. They's a fine chance for a bear out that way. Them dogs is both old-timers and they have a good bear sense. If they start one, he'll have to get out by Jeter's stand." Before all the hunters got out of hearing, Birdeye called out and gave his final instructions. "Now listen, fellers. Keep your eyes and ears wide open, every minute. I'm going to take Coy and I'm going to work up this holler, through the middle of hell. Something tells me old Lucky is laying in there, where the wild pigs are, waiting to get himself a nice young pig for his dinner. If you uns hear Coy hitting up a warm trail, both of you, fetch your dogs and come a highballing. Old Lucky's been hunted so much, he ain't gonna run past them stands, and we'll have to get him right there at the head of this holler, under them big rock cliffs." Quickly the men and the dogs dispersed, only to be swallowed up in the boundless forest. Birdeye stopped long enough to load his rifle and address his young pup. "Coy, you ornery cuss," he growled savagely. "You're either going home tonight the proudest bear dog in Sevier County, or you ain't going home at all. I ain't gonna bother with feeding no animal that looks like your old grandsire Blue Nose and acts like a poodle. Now let's go." He slipped the leash off the collar ring, and within a flash, a black streak shot forward and was lost in the thick undergrowth. The owner of that streak followed, fighting his way through a tangle, with the strength and skill that only the native woodsmen ever acquire. But 4 feet are better than 2, and a hound's wind is stronger than the fleetest man's. Soon Coy was far ahead, his nose to the ground, his feet scarcely rustling the dead leaves. Occasionally Birdeye would catch a glimpse of the glossy black body through an opening in the forest growth. An hour passed. They were far up the ravine toward the wall of cliffs. Colin's eyes were now on the alert for freshly uprooted earth, a sign of wild hogs. He was looking for the dog killer. Suddenly, a half-mile to the west, came the familiar howl of Daily Walker's dog. Birdeye's trained ear caught immediately the meaning of the first long cry. "Oh, he's got him a hot one, sure as I live," he said, speaking aloud, as men often do in the depths of the woods. "I know them boys would start the first one today. They'll trail him to the top and Uncle Nelsie will shoot him there." Standing motionless in the forest, he continued to listen, taking in the whole situation, translating every changing note of the distant barking and howling. "The bear's in the middle of that thick laurel patch, where me and Jeter set our trap out last spring," he said, as the sound became muffled and faint. "Now he's going out Lockett Sprit on the Nye Trail," he continued, interpreting a sudden crescendo that came on the wind. Another wait. 3 minutes, 5 minutes, then 10. Then far above, again the trumpet notes of the dog. More faintly, too, the voices of the other dogs started chiming in. "Now, by God, they've got him going for sure. They've got him pretty near to the top by now," he went on. "I bet old Nelsie is sitting on a rock, waiting as calm as a cucumber on ice." Birdeye thought to himself, though, "It sure is funny that old Lucky hadn't said a word. He's laying powerful low." It seemed a long time, though in reality it was but a moment or two, before there came floating down from far away the faintly echoing crack of a rifle. "Uncle Nelsie's got him another one. That old man don't know how to miss. He was brung up on the old-time hog rifle, which took a coon's age to load the blame thing, and he just had to get his bear on the first shot." Suddenly, the still of the morning was broken again, this time by a long-drawn, deep-throated bugle call that rang through the immensity of the woods and reverberated from a shore of cliffs and ledges. The sound stirred Birdeye, like the trumpet of Gabriel, but his manner was as gruff and savage as ever. "That's that darn fool now," he muttered. "He thinks he's went and done something big. I hope it's old Lucky he's done stirred up. If it is, that black rascal's going to find out whether he's a bear dog or a sheep dog." Redoubling his struggles with the jungle, Birdeye set out in the direction of Coy's howling. It took every ounce of his giant strength to push through the thick forest that shut out even the sun. Coy's voice rose again and again at even shorter intervals. "It's a hot trail now, doggone it," Birdeye panted as he toiled on. "It's time them boys would be coming this way. Surely they've heard old Coy by now. That bear will be heading for the cliffs, and we got to get him cornered there." The long, melodious howls began to give way to quicker, sharper yelps. The hound had sighted his quarry, and he was in hot pursuit. From far away, the welcome sound of other dogs entered the race. A moment later, other voices took up in the cry from the farther side. Nelsie and his dogs were bringing reinforcements. Birdeye had gotten his second wind by that time, and he was plowing his way up through the bristling backbone of that ridge in the effort to intercept that bear at the foot of the tall cliffs. There, he was confident, in the deep fern beds at the base of the rocky wall, old Lucky would make his stand and put up the fight of his life. One final dash with almost superhuman endurance, and Birdeye stood on the narrow shelf of rock that commanded a view of the cliff and the ravine below it, up which soon the bear must be coming. In fact, the snapping of dry branches could already be heard, as something far down the holler was plunging through the brush. It was a moment to thrill even the most seasoned hunters. The whole mountainside roared and rang with the tuneful sounds of the chase. Suddenly, 100 yards below, in the ravine, the brushes were shaking violently. Some unseen object was working its rapid way up through the tangle. In a few seconds, it would emerge from the undergrowth into the great fern bed, less than 50 yards from where Birdeye stood. He coolly cocked his rifle, planted his feet for a steady aim, and waited. He knew the bear would only be a few leaps ahead of Coy, and in just a few moments the whole pack would be on the spot and surround the beast. It was in those few moments that Birdeye counted on getting his decisive shot. It was but a fraction of a minute, however, that he realized his plan was thwarted. As the huge bear lurched upward into the clear space, Birdeye instantly recognized that it was notorious old Lucky. Birdeye's rifle was on his shoulder, and his eye was peering down the barrel, seeking the exact spot for the bullet. But he hadn't counted on the amazing speed of Coy. The black pup was alongside in a flash and planted himself excitingly square between the marksman and the target. The fight was on. The dog made a spring directly towards the bear's throat, but he was hurled backwards down a slope by a vicious cuff from the bear's forepaw. The dagger-like claws cut a gash in the velvet skin of the dog's shoulder and drew a yelp of pain and rage from him. Again, Birdeye took quick aim, but there was no time for a shot. The dog had lunged once more, his white teeth snarling and his eyes livid with fury. The bear, with an incredible swiftness, met the quick leap with another blow that hurled the dog into a mass of jagged rock and laid open a deep cut on his head. Coy staggered and emitted a howl of pain. But in an instant, he was all bristles and wrath again, growling horribly and tensing for another spring. The rest of the dog pack had now reached the spot, and they were making a brave show of joining the attack, barking and growling and snapping, and making sudden attacks at the hindquarters of the bear. Old Lucky kept turning this way and that way, his big feet constantly mulling the ferns into the ground, his cunning squint eyes anticipating every movement of his foes. Most of the dogs, being sophisticated bear hounds, mingled great discretion with their valor. They were content with the occasional jab at the hind foot and exhibiting lightning speed at retreating under fire. Coy alone was reckless to venture, lunge after lunge, always striking for the throat, but each time being flung back with a terrific blow and a cruel tearing of flesh. In Birdeye's breast, there rose a great swell of exultation, though he never would have been weak enough to confess such a feeling. His heavy bass voice roared about the deafening racket. "Get him, Coy, you black scoundrel, you! Keep right after him, big boy! You ain't no dog of mine if you go white eye on me now." So fast and furious were the dog's mad leaps, and so brief the moments in between that Birdeye could never get a shot, though he kept his rifle in position and his finger always on the trigger. By now, Coy's head was dripping with blood from a dozen gashes, and his strength was beginning to wane, but the fight in him was still white heat. At last, the bear ignored the rest of the dogs and drew all his strength into one desperate offensive. With rage, he received the hurtling charge of Coy, and with both massive forepaws, he seized the dog by his head. Then he began to slowly draw the black body into the embrace as he attempted to break the dog's neck. Birdeye saw the move and instantly knew what it meant. He uttered a hoarse cry of rage. "Dad burn ye, Lucky, you old hellion! You done went too far now. You're killing my dog, and by God, you're gonna stop." He took a dozen leaping strides, brandishing the rifle like a club. Then with a wrathful oath, he threw the gun to the ground and charged barehanded into the fray. 2 minutes later, Daly Walker, with Bud and Tom, burst out of the brush just in time to witness a spectacle at which they could only gaze in eye-popping amazement. All they could make out at first was a tumbling mass of dark bodies, engulfed in an all-out battle. The few remaining vestiges of clothing that hung on Birdeye were in shreds. His body was crisscrossed with frightful furrows. His face, now, if it was a face, was a ghastly ensemble of scratches, cuts, and bruises, and was hideous to behold. His left arm was bitten and clawed until it dangled uselessly at his side, but he was still in the fight. As the other hunters danced about, trying to decide what to do to aid their champion, they saw Birdeye fumbling in what had once been a pocket. When his hand came out, the fingers clasped an old single-bladed knife. As the bear turned for another slap at the relentless Coy, Birdeye was holding the bone handle of the knife in his teeth, and he opened the blade with the fingers on his only good hand. Then the watcher saw a powerful right arm swing out and saw a flash of steel as it came back. The bear gurgled hoarsely as the blade sank into his jugular. Suddenly, the wild clawing ceased. The great hulk of the beast relaxed and quivered, then rolled down the slope of a dozen feet and lodged into a mass of rocks. Coy lay on the ground, still snarling, where he'd made his final leap for the bear. Birdeye tried to rise to his feet, but he staggered and he crumpled into a heap beside the dog. The knife still gripped in his hand. It took a Herculean effort to take down old Lucky. As Birdeye laid there, too weak to speak, he reached out and he laid his hand on old Coy's head. There ain't no other bear dog I'd rather have. The two laid there for just a moment, with a dog who was trying to prove to his best friend that he was willing to die, and the owner who died saving his loyal dog.